Today I would like to share a few thoughts about our friend Charlie. For me, Charlie was my brother-in-law, dear friend, hunting and fishing buddy, mentor, and role model. But he was so much more than this. When you live to be 97, you are many things to many people. Son, brother, husband, father, grandfather, and great-grandfather, to name just a few. Born on the family farm in South Dakota, he kept throughout his life values that formed his basic character: faith, family, honesty, and an incredible work ethic. He was always a South Dakota farmer, even after moving to the big city, which means he was always an optimist. As Will Rogers said, the farmer has to be an optimist, or he wouldn't be a farmer. And then there was the soldier who fought in the Pacific. Again, optimism and his core values carried him through tough times and forged his lifetime respect and affinity for his fellow veterans. Around 69 years ago, Charlie and his bride took a big chance. They left behind the life they knew, hoping to start a new and better chapter. They had no car. They arrived by bus in downtown Los Angeles. They carried their possessions. They had little in the way of money and no promised work. But they had everything they needed. They had each other and that farmer's optimism. Charlie would tell you that without Lucille, he would not have succeeded. Lucille was his wife, partner, and best friend. Together they raised their family and by any measure succeeded. A perfect pair. Charlie loved to eat, and Lucille can make a gourmet meal out of a cup of hot water. One time after breakfast, I took him fishing. Of course, Lucille prepared a sack lunch for Charlie. The lunch never made lunchtime. Before we cleared the harbor, Charlie was wolfing down a sandwich and chasing it with coffee. "Charlie," I said, "you can't be hungry, you just ate breakfast." "I'm not," he said, "but I'm not taking any chances." On their 69th wedding anniversary, I estimated that, not counting lunches, Lucille had prepared Charlie 50,000 meals, give or take a few. Most importantly, Charlie loved his family, and they loved him. The last 1.5 years were very hard for Charlie, and we would have lost him much earlier without the care he received from Lucille and his daughters. They loved him so much that no amount of care was too much, even when he was grouchy. It is my belief that the most important thing one person can give another is their time. Charlie gave much of his time to others, including my brother Pat and myself. Pat and I spent many days hunting and fishing with Charlie, and Charlie was an enthusiastic camp cook, especially breakfast. I recall one morning high up in the mountains, Charlie had made a breakfast scramble that Pat and I were busy wolfing down. Grease was sizzling off the stove, and the smoke was so dense it would have killed the canary in the coal mine. Laughingly, Charlie exclaims, "What happened to the spatula?" It seems he had melted 3/4 of the spatula into the scramble we had just ate. "Pat," I said, "that was a non-stick Teflon spatula, and they say Teflon causes cancer." "Look at the bright side," Pat responded. "At least we'll never be constipated." Optimism. It's contagious. But what he really loved was his family. I know this to be true because he told me so. He fought leaving this world not out of fear of death, but out of love for Lucille and his family. Charlie saw something special in all of his children and their children, and when asked for his advice, he rarely snapped an answer. Instead, his responses were well thought and profound. Years ago, Pat and I were pheasant hunting with Charlie near his old homestead in South Dakota. Bouncing down the gravel road in an old pickup called the Great Pumpkin, Charlie was a non-stop historical guide for each farm we passed. This is where so-and-so died in a blizzard, or died in a fire here, killed in a car wreck there. Stop, we laughingly yelled. Don't you have stories where people don't die? We all laughed and continued our day. As the sun began to set and the shadows lengthened, we were returning home when, out of nowhere, a pheasant flies into our windshield, continues on for 100 yards or so, and seems to fall from the sky into the stubble of the field. Charlie hits the brakes and brings the great pumpkin to a sliding stop. Let's wait here a minute, he said, and see if the dog can find that bird. So we all got out of the pickup, and Charlie sent the dog out on a seemingly hopeless errand, while we visited and drank the last of the coffee. You know, Charlie said, it's not what you take out of this world, it's what you leave behind. A kind word, a smile. Out of the dark emerged the dog with the pheasant. Optimism. That was Charlie.